Good evening, and let us try to understand that we really mean good in its spiritual sense. An evening of quiet authority. An evening of communing with what is already present. An evening of sharing not merely words about Christ, but the living Christ as presence, as that which is here before any word forms and remains when our words are finished. We are not gathered to stir the air. We are here to settle into what is. Do you feel that? Not a thrill, perhaps not even a tingle, only the simple fact that something within us recognizes itself and says, yes, here I am. Now I am going to interrupt myself right here to make an important distinction, because it will save you much wondering. In the world, when we speak of spiritual experience, we very often mean a search for sensation. The music swells, the room grows warm, tears flow, we are lifted for a few moments, and we say, "Ah, now I have touched God." And then on Monday morning, with the telephone ringing and the dishes and the bills, that God seems to have vanished. Excuse me, that is not God vanishing. That is a mood departing. The strange thing is that many of us, and for a long time I include myself, have made emotion the measuring stick of our communion with God. But emotion is weather, presence is climate, emotion is ripple, Christ is the quiet depth in which ripples play and subside. When we use the word Christ here, let us not think of a personality, a favorite hymn, or a feeling that rises in the chest. What we mean by Christ is an inward government, a calm dominion, an authority that is of itself and needs no assistance from our moods. It is the law of life functioning as life, the order of spirit ordering its universe without strain, without show. It does not argue and it does not persuade. It simply is, and because it is, it governs. You may be glad or sad, elated or weary. Christ remains what Christ is. It is closer to you than breathing and nearer than hands and feet, and I am letting you in on the secret. It is recognizable not as excitement, but as quiet authority. Now remember this, if we are chasing a feeling, we are likely missing the authority of Christ within, because authority is quiet, not excited. Authority does not announce itself with fanfare. It stands, and by its standing, all that is unlike itself quietly ceases to govern. Think of the way a compass needle settles to true north. It does not strive, it yields, and in the yielding it reveals direction. That is Christ in you, not the clamor that promises, I will fix, I will perform, but the stillness that knows, I am. And I do not mean that this leads to a life of sitting up on cloud nine. No. There may still be traffic to navigate, children to tend, labor to offer, and yes, letters to answer. But through it all there can be a center that is not thrown by applause or blame by sunshine or storm, because it has recognized itself as presence and discovered that the government is not on our shoulders. The government is upon His shoulder. By now I am in a position to say this to you with a great deal of authority. This quiet government can be learned as recognition. It is not a theory, it is a way. In the infinite way, we speak of practicing the presence, and we mean exactly that, a practice, not a sensation to pursue, but a turning, an inner stilling, a willingness to rest back into what is true before thought labels it. Meditation is something of an art that can be learned. We learn to close the door, not merely the door of a room, but the door within ourselves to the world's report, to our own agitated commentary, to the craving for a sign. Father, here I am. That is all. And in that all, something begins to be felt. Not necessarily a wave or a heat, but a hush. And in that hush, without our planning or pushing, the Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. Now I must say a word about this reward, lest you mistake me. We are not bargaining with God for results. We do not enter stillness to get a better job, a better body, a better neighbor. We enter because God is, and yet, you will find this, when inner government is acknowledged, outward life finds its order. Harmony reveals itself. Supply moves without personal strain. Relationships mellow, decisions clarify, and often the very problems that roared like lions begin to purr and move on. What prompted it? What gave it the impulse? I do not know. I only know this. I can of my own self do nothing. The Father within me doeth the works, and this within is the only reliable location of proof. For it is there the government is first established, and there the peace first appears, and there the certainty arises that needs no argument. So tonight we set an expectation that is very gentle, and it is very strong. We are not going to try to climb into a mood. We are not going to demand fireworks of heaven. We will, instead, consent to recognize the quiet authority of presence, even if we feel nothing at all. Do you doubt it? Give it the honest experiment of your listening. Sit with empty hands and an unhurried breath, and say within yourself, "Where I am, God is. Where God is, I am." Say it, and then stop saying. Let it be, and notice whether the mind, that busy servant, begins to lose its insistence. Notice whether the heart, that brave companion, begins to loosen its grip on drama. This is not victory by force. This is government by being. Now remember this. Carry it with you as we go forward. Christ within is not a feeling to chase, but an inward authority to recognize. You will never need to know moods. You will only need to know God. And knowing God is not accomplished by storming heaven. It is accomplished by yielding to the heaven already here. In these hours we will not inflate you with promises. We will show you a way, a secret practiced in silence, that will, if you are faithful, show its fruit openly. Not hype, not clamor, fruit. Quiet harmony that follows the recognition of quiet authority, and that is enough for an evening of good. Let us begin. Let us look honestly, kindly, at a habit most of us picked up without even knowing it, because the whole world trained us into it. We began to judge our spiritual life by our feelings. If a hymn lifted us, if a message thrilled us, if a silence produced a sweet hush in the chest, if tears came easily and a sense of inspiration ran like warm current in the body, we wrote in our hearts, God was here tonight. And when another night the music fell flat, when the prayers seemed like words floating in a dry wind, when the chest felt like stone and our thoughts ran and ran and ran, we whispered, God has withdrawn. Excuse me, God is not a visitor and God does not keep office hours. But you see how it happened. In the absence of instruction and inner authority, we took emotion to be our thermometer, and we began checking it on the hour. How did it become the measuring stick? The world is saturated with atmosphere. There is the atmosphere of a cathedral, and there is the atmosphere of a market. There is the atmosphere of a hospital corridor at 2 in the morning, and the atmosphere of the sea at sunrise. Music tilts the feeling one way, a memory tilts it another. The smile of a loved one softens it. The ring of a telephone tightens it. A cup of coffee, a sleepless night, a headline, a change in the weather. Have you noticed how these change the entire palette of the heart? And because we were honest seekers but untrained in inner governance, we mistook these tides for the spirit itself. We said, I felt peace, therefore God was present. Do you see? That is like saying that the leaves moved, therefore the tree lives, forgetting that wind moves leaves that are not living at all. The livingness is deeper than movement. The presence is deeper than feeling. Now remember this, and please take it not as a rebuke, but as liberation. Feeling is a poor spiritual instrument because it is changeable. Today it runs high. Tomorrow it runs low. This friend brightens it. That news dims it. This hymn carries it. That silence unmasks it. If we make feeling the barometer of God, then our God comes and goes with the weather. Our Christ rises and sets like the sun. Our practice becomes a chase, an exhausting chase after atmospheres. And what happens to the soul when the atmosphere refuses to cooperate? We begin working, straining, engineering. We adjust the lighting. We lengthen the prayer. We repeat the phrase until our throat is tired. We try a new book, a new technique, a new teacher, and still we are haunted by the whisper, "Get back to where you were." Back where? Back to a mood, and that is bondage. I am going to interrupt myself and say very plainly, we are not condemning emotion. Tears are not ungodly. Laughter is not unholy. The warmth that sometimes rises, the inspiration that sometimes bursts, the relief that sometimes washes through. These can be the lovely companions of our way, but they must come down from the throne. They are not the Christ. They are not the proof. They are, at best, the perfume in the air after the gardener has passed through the garden. The gardener is presence, and presence is discerned by authority, not by aroma. Up to this time, many of us, and I include years of my own stumbling in this, have labored under an inner demand. Produce the feeling, get back the lift. The result is that we become dependent on props and atmospheres. We need the same chair, the same hour, the same chant. We grow suspicious of Tuesday mornings and hopeful about Sunday evenings, and we hurry to the room where last month we felt it, as if the infinite answered to furniture. Have you noticed the fatigue that sets in? Have you noticed how the mind, clever as it is, begins to play conjurer, pulling rabbits of sensation out of hats of suggestion? And then, after all the conjuring, life stands waiting at the door with its bills and its neighbors and its decisions, and the conjured peace dissolves like smoke. What has failed us? Not God. Our instrument failed us because we chose a changeable instrument to measure the changeless. Let me tell you why I can say this to you with assurance. The strange thing is that I did not know how to pray. I was earnest, I was reading, I was repeating, and often I was moved. But between the times of being moved, I was governed by the same restlessness as before. Then came seasons of dryness, seasons when no feeling could be conjured, when the heavens seemed brass and the mouth of prayer tasted like dust. And I am letting you in on the secret. Those seasons became my teachers. They drove me, no, they escorted me into the inner sanctuary where I learned to sit without a sign, to be still without reward, to say within, "Father, here I am," and stop there. In those moments when no emotion agreed to help me, something else made itself known. A quiet standing, not a force, not a personality, an inner government that required no assistance. What is the true criterion then? Authority. Not the authority of volume or of argument, but the authority of being. Be still and know that I am God. Do you hear that? Not be thrilled, not be stirred, be still. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee, not whose nerves are humming. Authority is recognized by a cessation of personal urgency. The mind that was shouting begins to speak more softly, and then it pauses. The heart that was clenching begins to loosen. Decisions that were crashing at the door begin to wait their turn. You may feel no sweetness in it at all. You may even feel tired, but something has shifted government. Where I am, God is. Where God is, I am. And because the I that I am is not a personality, it does not need mood to exist. Test this in the everyday. You are on a bus and the noise is shrill. You are at a desk and the clock is pushing. Or you are at a bedside and the air is heavy. If feeling is your barometer, you will conclude, "No God here, I must get to my quiet room." And that very conclusion disinherits you in the moment you most need inheritance. But if authority is your criterion, you close the inner door without moving a foot. You place your attention within and remember, not forcefully but honestly, the kingdom of God is within you. You do not work up a feeling, you consent. And if you will wait 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30, You may notice something that is not a feeling at all, the sense that you do not have to manage the universe. Beautiful. In that awareness, God is on the field, whether you feel Him or not. Do you doubt that this is safer than relying on emotion? Consider this. If emotion is your proof, then the absence of emotion is your condemnation. Every dry hour becomes a verdict against you. Every restless mind becomes a failure. But if authority is your proof, then the absence of emotion is not a verdict. It is an invitation to trust. Dryness ceases to be an enemy. It becomes the ground on which you learn to walk by inner government. This is the beginning of freedom. For then the Christ does not come and go. It is recognized or it is not recognized. And the recognition depends not upon your weather, but upon your willingness to be still and to know. Now remember this. I am summarizing it so you can carry it out of this room and into your hallway and into your kitchen. Emotion is a poor spiritual instrument because it is changeable. Christ's authority is recognizable even when feelings are absent. Let the heart feel as it will. Let the mind throw its little parades. You take your seat inside and yield. Yield to the presence that is already where you are. Withdraw the crown from sensation and give it back to God. The Father that seeth in secret will reward you openly, not necessarily with a sensation, but with fruit. Order, harmony, quiet sufficiency that does not evaporate when the music stops. And then, without strain, you will discover that you are no longer the weatherman of your soul. You are the witness of the climate of God. Now let us be very clear, because unless our terms are clear, we will wander again into the old country without knowing we have crossed the border. When I speak of authority, I do not mean domination. I do not mean force. I do not mean a temperament that can speak louder than the room or stare a man into silence. I do not mean the certainty of personality that can marshal facts and quotations and make an argument march. No, authority in the spiritual sense is not the push of a human will. It is not the magnetism of a voice. It is not the persuasion of a clever tongue. You may have all of those and be far from authority, or you may have none of those and stand clothed in authority. Authority, as we are using it, is inner government. It is the presence governing, not a person controlling. Actually, let me interrupt myself, because this is important. There is a power in suggestion. There is a power in atmosphere. There is a power in rhetoric. These powers can move a room. They can move your emotions. They can even move your decisions. But they cannot move the law of spirit. They cannot establish order where order is not recognized. They cannot do the works that only the Father within can do. And because they cannot, if you mistake them for authority, you will be left with an aftertaste of strain. The show ends, the mood drops, the mind comes asking again, and now what? Inner government is not a show. It is a settled isness that does not require mood to remain itself. What does this quiet authority feel like? You may not feel it at all as feeling. It announces itself by what it stops, by what ceases. It is recognized when urgency loosens its grip, when the inner fist that was clutching a result opens without argument. It is recognized when you no longer need to contradict appearances, when you can look at a report, a symptom, a letter, a bank statement, and not be mesmerized by the first verdict it pronounces. You do not have to deny it. You do not have to dramatize it. You simply do not give it the throne. There is no quarrel in it. There is simply a refusal to bow. Authority is the end of inner quarreling. It is the cessation of the need to fix, to explain, to justify, to prove. And in that cessation there is a quiet certainty that does not shout and does not plead. Beautiful. How is that possible without effort? It is possible because of an agency reversal that I beg you to hear with more than your ears. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me doeth the works. The government is not on your shoulders. The government is upon his shoulder. If I speak of myself, I bear witness to a lie. Do you hear? Authority is not the human announcing, I will. Authority is presence revealing, I am. In that reversal, strain changes hands. You cease to be the engineer of outcomes and become the witness of God's government. And because the Father within is the doer, the activity is without stress. And because it is without stress, it leaves peace in its wake instead of exhaustion. Two centers are always available to us. One is the center of personal will, and from that place, life is a campaign. We make plans upon plans. We make calls upon calls. We manipulate. We charm. We threaten. We push. We try to keep our story coherent by 1,000 small edits of truth. We wake with the sense, I must, and we lay down at night with the sense, I didn't do enough. I know that country. I have paid taxes there. The other center is surrendered stillness, the interior sanctuary to which the Master pointed when he said, Enter into thy closet and shut the door. From this place there is not inactivity, there is inspired activity. There is not indifference. There is the kind of interest that does not hurry. Things are done. Calls are returned. Decisions are made. But the initiative is not a nervous push. It is a quiet leading that carries its own sufficiency. Let me give you the contrast in the language of a day. A notice arrives that troubles you. In the first center you spring up, argue with it in your head, rehearse speeches, summon allies, calculate consequences, and you begin to draft a dozen emails in minds and machines. In the second center, you close the inner door for 5 seconds, for 10, and you acknowledge, where I am, God is. You do not plead for a change. You do not bargain, you abide. And then you find that either the next step is shown, a simple, unforced step, or the fire that was in the notice does not find wood in you, and it burns itself out. The outer act may be the same in both cases. You may write, you may speak, but the government is different, and because it is different, the fruit is different. How will you know when inner government is present? Here is a simple diagnostic, and I am letting you in on the secret. When authority is present, you stop needing to prove. You do not need to prove yourself right to your neighbor, to your family, to your colleagues, or to your own mind. You do not need to explain God to a problem. You do not need to fix the universe in the next hour. You find yourself able to say, I do not know, and there is no shame in it, because you are content to let the knowing arise from where it truly is. You find your words becoming fewer and truer. You find your breath unhurried. Doors that must open are knocked upon gently. Doors that do not open are left alone without resentment. You can let a conversation remain unfinished without panic. You can let another be mistaken about you without rushing to edit their mind. The compulsion to manage loses its glamour. This is authority, not a feeling, not a posture, a government. Now remember this. Quiet authority does not argue with appearances. It refuses to be mesmerized by them. If a storm crosses the sky, authority does not stand at the window denouncing the clouds. It recognizes that the sky is not in danger from its weather. If a pain cries out, authority does not deny that it cries. It denies its jurisdiction to name reality. And out of that denial of jurisdiction, not of sight, not of sound, but of authority, there comes a poise that is itself the beginning of healing. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. To stay the mind is to locate the government where it belongs, and to let it be government. By now I am in a position to say this to you with a great deal of authority. The shift from personal management to inner government can be learned as surely as a craft is learned. And as in every craft there is a mark of proficiency, so here the mark is this abiding. You begin to abide. You begin to prefer quiet certainty to the thrill of conquest. You begin to notice how often the best word is no word, how often the best act is the act that rises without strain, how often the miracle occurs with no one to take credit. Then you understand the whole mystery. I can of my own self do nothing, and yet everything that needs doing is done. Carry this with you as we move on. Not force, not personality, inner government. Your task is recognition and consent. The works belong to the Father within. Abide there 5 seconds, 10, 30. Abide and do not hurry the garden. The gardener is present. The gardener knows. And where the gardener governs, fruit comes in season without whips and without trumpets. Let us carry this one step deeper, because unless we are very clear about where proof is to be found, we will wander like travelers without a map and blame the road for our delay. The kingdom of God is within you, not around you in circumstances, not across from you in another person's face, not ahead of you in tomorrow's contract, not behind you in yesterday's memory, within you. If proof is what you seek, if assurance is what the heart longs for, its only reliable address is within. Everything else may bear witness to it later, but the courtroom in which the verdict is rendered is your own inner sanctuary. Do you hear the Master's instruction? Enter into thy closet, and when thou hast shut thy door, pray to thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly. There it is, both the location and the law. The location is secret. The reward is open. We reverse it and we lose ourselves. We look for the open as proof that the secret is true, and we find ourselves forever waiting on the weather. I am letting you in on the secret that freed me. He is closer to you than breathing and nearer than hands and feet. Go into your own inner sanctuary and close the door within yourself. And there, before any change can announce itself in body or bank or calendar, recognize the government that already is. Why does the location matter so much? Because if you seek proof outside, you must wait for circumstances to repent before you can trust. You must wait for the ache to stop, for the letter to arrive, for the account to replenish, for the other to smile, for the official to approve. And while you wait on Caesar to say yes, your heart becomes a hostage to Caesar's hour. Do you see the bondage? Today the numbers look decent and faith rises. Tomorrow a line dips and faith falters. Today the body is quiet and you declare, God is present. Tomorrow a nerve protests and you begin to bargain with heaven. That is not proof. That is weather. Proof in the spiritual sense is this, that you find, before anything turns, the unmoved center that does not require turning to be what it is. Where I am, God is. Where God is, I am. And because that is true in the inner chamber, I can go to my desk or to my kitchen or to my neighbor with a government on his shoulder, not on mine. Now I am going to interrupt myself and ask you to consider this very practically. A bill is due. A report arrives with words you do not prefer. A message from a loved one is stiff and cool. If you look for proof in those lines, your prayer will become a negotiation. You will plead for ink to rearrange itself, for flesh to obey your timetable, for another mind to rewrite its thought. You will measure every hour by whether it leaned in your favor, and if the hours displease you, you will pronounce, my prayer failed. Excuse me, the Father did not fail. We consulted the wrong court. We called the world to the bench and asked it to tell us whether God is God. The infinite way reverses this. We go inside first. We recognize the presence before we ask the hour its mood. We acknowledge the inner government before we count the votes of appearances. And from that recognition, quiet, unforced, sometimes without a flicker of feeling, the fruit begins to ripen without our whips. How does it operate? Not by magic, not by mental engineering, but by the law of cause and effect in its spiritual order. Cause is realized in the secret place. Effect follows as harmony in the open. The Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. When you go inside and cease granting the problem its jurisdiction, when you refuse to let a paper, a symptom, or a scowl declare reality to you, you are not denying that they are seen. You are denying their authority to govern your knowing. And at that moment of inward consent, something comes to stand in you. It is not sentimental, it is not dramatic, it is the quiet I am that displaces the noisy I must. In that displacement, the next step appears, or the heat of the crisis evaporates in your chest, and the outer scene begins in its own good order to reveal a rightness that was invisible while you were arguing. I can say this to you with authority because I have watched it, not for a week but for years, across desks and sick rooms and cables from far places. When I sought proof in results, I was a clerk to appearances, stamping their papers and trying to hurry them toward conclusions I could feel safe in. When I learned to take my hands off the outside and place my attention within, I discovered that safety does not arrive with mail. Safety is the presence of God recognized, and strangely, beautifully, letters seem to come on time. Bodies found their ease, relations softened, supply appeared without my contriving. What prompted it? What gave it the impulse? I do not know. I only know that when the inner government is acknowledged as cause, outer effect begins to line up without my speeches. Let us make this usable now, because otherwise it will remain poetry and not bread. When a pressure mounts, do not run first to the window to read the weather. Do not begin with the phone or the ledger or the mirror. Begin with the closet within. Close the door, by which I mean close your consent to the world's authority over your peace, and say within yourself, not loudly, not repeatedly, but sincerely, Father, here I am. Then be still. 5 seconds, 10, 30. Watch the mind attempt to lunge at the problem. Let it lunge and let it tire. Return to the simple truth. Where I am, God is. Not where the answer is, God will be. Where I am, God is. If a verse helps, let it be this. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. Do not stay the mind on the problem. Do not treat the problem. Do not decorate the problem with spiritual phrases. Stay the mind on thee. In that abiding, you will notice, not always at once, but truly, the quieting of the inner argument. That quiet is your proof. The rest is fruit. Do not misunderstand me. The fruit will come. The Master did not lie. Reward openly. You will see a way made where 5 minutes ago there was no way. You will hear the needed word at the needed hour. You will find that what frightened you either dissolves or takes its right place without injury. But now hear this and remember it. The only dependable place to recognize Christ's authority is within, before appearances change. When you have that, you are no longer a leaf waiting for the wind to be gentle. You are the tree whose roots drink from the river within. If I mount to heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. If I walk through the market or sit in the night watch, thou art there. And because thou art there, I do not need the market to smile before I can rest. This is an art, and it is learnable. Anyone and everyone can turn within, shut the inner door, and attend to the one who is nearer than breath. With practice, the recognition becomes quicker, steadier, almost at will. Not because we master a technique, but because we stop wandering from the only home there is. So take this with you as a rule for this very hour. Refuse to seek proof outside. Turn within first. Let the inner government be established as cause. Then leave your problem to that invisible presence and go about your tasks without strain. The Father that seeth in secret will attend to the open, and you will discover that trust is not a posture toward a changing world. Trust is the recognition of the unchanging one within you. Beautiful. Now remember this. Within first. Always within. Let me tell you very simply, very plainly, because if this remains theory, it will serve you badly when the heart is tired. The strange thing is that I didn't know how to pray. I wanted God. I do not mean I wanted a code or a creed. I wanted God. There were years in which I was sincere, and I read, and I attended, and I listened, and I repeated, and often I was moved. But when the music stopped and the friends went home and the lights in the street turned to that late-hour hush, I would sit and ask within myself, how does a man actually reach God? And there was no answer I could use at 2 in the morning when the mind was noisy and the air felt empty. I was seeking with the heart of a child and the method of a clerk. I asked and I asked and I asked, but always with words trying to pry open a door that was never locked. And I am letting you in on the secret, because it is your secret too, that not knowing how to pray became the doorway to learning the inward way. It began not with a triumph, but with a failure. There came a season when all the words tasted like paper in my mouth. I could not find the feeling. The old helps would not help. I sat one night and made an honest confession to the one who sees in secret. Father, I do not know how to pray. If thou art here, thou wilt have to be thyself here. I do not know the steps. And then I stopped. I did not add a promise or a bargain. I did not reach for a verse as a magic key. I simply stopped. Do you know what met me there? Not a rush. Not a vision. Not a sweetness. What met me was the end of my pushing. A stillness, awkward at first, like learning to stand without leaning. And in that awkward standing there was the faintest recognition that I was not alone in the task of being. Be still and know that I am God. I had read it. That night I obeyed it, and in the obedience there was a knowing that did not announce itself as a feeling at all. Up to that time, peace to me had been the breathing out after the pressure eased, the hush that comes when the noise stops. It is a good peace, and I will not scold it. It comforts the nerves, it rests the chest. It is the kindness of a quiet room. But there is another peace. Let me make a difference here that will serve you. There is the peace of emotional relief, and there is the peace that comes when personal will releases and inner government takes its place. The first depends on weather. The second is the weather of God. The first is like a breeze that cools a hot day. The second is like discovering there is a root under the tree, and it was there in drought and in flood. The first comes when a circumstance smiles. The second can be found when the circumstance is frowning and has not changed by a hair. The first says, I feel better now. The second says, without words, I am no longer in charge, and therefore I am safe. In the days that followed, I began to experiment with this not knowing as a practice. I stopped beginning prayer with a problem. I stopped telling God his business. I stopped asking, how? Instead, I went inside and made the same simple admission. Father, here I am. Sometimes I added nothing. Sometimes I listened to the inner racket die down like a market closing at dusk. Sometimes I was bored. Sometimes I was restless. Sometimes thoughts ran races around a track and would not quit. And do you know, these very times that I would have called failures before became the truest teachers. I learned to wait 10 seconds, 20, 30. I learned to notice that I didn't need to settle every question before God could be God. I learned to recognize a shift that was not sentimental and not dramatic, but unmistakable. The sense that I could take my hands off the wheel. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me doeth the works. Not a motto now, an operation. In that operation, urgency lost its throne. And I am going to interrupt myself, because this is where many sincere hearts turn away too soon. They sit 5 minutes and feel nothing. They close their eyes, and instead of angels, they hear laundry lists. They fold their hands, and the body protests. Then the whisper comes, "You are no good at this. This is for mystics or quiet people or people with a different sort of brain." Excuse me. No. If you have felt nothing in meditation, you have not failed. You are often nearer to authority than you suppose, because you are learning to separate Christ from mood. That very dryness you dread is the classroom in which the will learns to release, without payment in feelings. Do you see the gift? The Father who seeth in secret does not grade you on how sweet your hour felt. He is present as presence whether you hum with inspiration or sit plain as a wooden chair. Your part is to show up at the door within and stop asking the wind to be still before you trust the root. What changed outwardly when I took this inward way? I had fewer speeches to make to problems. I lost my appetite for analyzing causes and effects in the dust. My work did not diminish. My explanations did. Where once I would have taken a symptom and given it 5 names and 3 treatments in my mind before breakfast, I found myself saying inwardly, "Where I am, God is," and turning away from the X-ray of imagination. Do not treat the problem. That instruction would come to me with more light later, but I began to taste it here. I found that if I practiced contact, the contact that is not a feeling but an authority, I could go to my desk, my phone, my neighbor, without carrying the government like a burden, and strangely, things arranged themselves with less sweat and less trumpet. A word came at the needed hour. A reconciliation that looked impossible yesterday arrived like a bird that had known the way all along. Supply, which used to be a wrestling match with figures, began to flow in ways I had not diagrammed. Did I do it? No. I testified to the way the gardener governs without my whip. Now remember this, for it will steady you on dull mornings and on hurried afternoons. Learning to pray this way is learning to yield. Yielding is not passivity. It is inner consent to a government you did not invent. Yield, and you will notice that thoughts soften their edges. Yield, and you will see that the body unlearns the hunch of bracing. Yield, and you will find that words become fewer, and, to your surprise, more accurate. Yield, and you will understand why the Master said, "Take no thought," not as a scolding, but as the charter of a new government. You will take care. You will fulfill your tasks, but you will leave the universe free to be God's concern in you and through you. There were moments, friends, when the old appetite for sensation returned, and I thought, where is the thrill? Where is the lift? And I had to smile and say to myself, the lift is no longer in the weather. The lift is in the weight being on his shoulder and not on mine. It is a quiet discovery. No symbols, but you test it by fruit. You wake and you do not dread the day. You meet a demand and you do not exaggerate its size. You lie down and you do not run the mind like a mill all night. Not because you engineered peace, but because you recognized the one who is peace. And in that recognition, the need to engineer dissolved. So if you are in that honest place tonight, wanting God and not knowing how, consider yourself blessed. The old method must fail before the true is born. Go inside, shut the door, say, Father, here I am. If a verse wants to sit beside you, let it be. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. Stay your mind, not on a result, not on a picture, not on a sentence repeated as a lever. Stay it on him. Sit until the argument tires. Sit until the need to ask how drops like a tool you no longer require. 5 seconds? 10? 30? Beautiful. That quiet, whether you feel a trace of sweetness or not, is your proof. The rest, the reconciliations, the provisions, the ease in places that used to be hard, that is fruit. And you will be able to say with your own mouth, with your own life as witness, I did not know how to pray. Now I know to be still. Let us not only speak of this, let us taste it together, and in tasting, learn that we are not dependent on a mood to know God. We will have a few moments now, not to work a miracle, not to manufacture a peace, not to collect a feeling, but simply to recognize what already is. And I am going to ask you to make this simple. Close the door on the world for a moment. If you will, allow the eyes to rest, perhaps to close. If not, soften the gaze. Let the hands be comfortable, the feet at ease. Let the breath be natural. Do not take a spiritual breath. There is no such thing. Let breath be breath. We are not reaching. We are not pushing. We are entering the closet within. Say within yourself, quietly, without effort, Father, here I am. No more than that. We are not going to tell the Father what to do. We are not going to describe a condition. We are not going to bribe or bargain. Father, here I am. Now we are going to be still. Not a forced stillness, not a held brace stillness. A simple ceasing. 5 seconds, 10, 30. Beautiful. Do you notice that thoughts arrive on their own schedule? They will speak of yesterday and tomorrow, of a small errand and a large concern, and some of them may be noisy, and some of them may be soft. We are not going to meet them with a wrestling hold. We are not going to push them away. We are going to let them pass as clouds pass across a sky that is not endangered by weather. Do you observe this? When you do not resist, the stream slows, not because you captured it, but because you ceased to stir it. And even if it does not slow, do you notice something else? The space in which these thoughts appear and disappear is not moving. That unmoving is your sanctuary. Get acquainted with the space, not the traffic. If a verse wants to sit beside you as a companion, let it come of its own accord. Be still and know that I am God. Only if it comes. Do not pull on it. We are not composing a prayer. We are consenting to presence. Now I am going to interrupt myself to caution you. If you are listening for a sweetness, let that go. If you are scanning your chest for a lift, let that go. We are not looking for a mood tonight. We are learning to recognize authority without decoration. And here is the secret sign, the one I promised to let you in on. There is a gentle stand within, not a tensing, not a bracing, not a soldier at attention, a king seated, a government upon his shoulder. Do you sense, not as feeling perhaps, but as a simple fact, that you can take your hands off the wheel? Do you notice that the compulsion to fix, to explain, to rush is no longer sitting in the captain's chair? That is the sign. No trumpet, just the transfer of jurisdiction. Let us test this in a very small way. Let some modest matter come to mind, something you have been inclined to fuss over. Do not bring it up to fix it. Do not bring it up to treat it. Bring it only as you might bring a child into a quiet room. Not to scold, not to examine, just to be present in presence. Allow it to stand there in the periphery, while the center is, where I am, God is. Say that inwardly now, once, and then let even the words go. Where I am, God is. Do you notice that the matter can be present without taking the throne, that you do not need to escort it out or argue with it or label it? You are denying not its existence as an appearance, but its jurisdiction as authority. This is the inner government at work. Stay with me here for a few more breaths that you do not manage. If an impulse arises to make a plan, to count the steps, to consult the clock, smile at it and let it pass. Return to the simple acknowledgement, I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me doeth the works. Do you hear the relief inside that sentence? Not the relief of a happy story, but the relief of a burden correctly placed. That relief is not dramatic, it is steady. It does not glitter, it governs. Now, while keeping that inward stand, let the ears open to the room. Sounds arrive. A floor creaks. A car moves at a distance. The air hums. These two come and go in the same unmoving space. Nothing in you that matters is altered by their comings and goings. If you are comfortable, let the eyes open gently. See the room, the light, the shapes, and notice whether the inward stand needed your eyes to be closed. It did not. The closet is not behind your eyelids. It is within consciousness. Beautiful. You carry it into the open without losing its secret. Take another look at that modest matter you placed in the periphery. Do not seize it. Let it be seen now in the same presence. Do you notice a difference? Not that the lines of the story have been rewritten in this minute, not that an answer has burst upon you, but that the heat around it has diminished, that its claim to define your peace has been revoked. That is authority. That is proof in the only court where proof is proof. We will add one more simple movement because I want you to know this can function while life is in motion. Inwardly, without changing your face, without changing your posture, bless the next step of your day by not choosing it with strain. Say within, Father, I am willing to be moved. Then stop. No imagining, no composing. Let the willingness stand. Do you feel the ease in that? If not, do you observe at least the absence of hurry as an idea? That absence is enough. We are not milking the hour for a sign. We are consenting to government. Now, let me say something very plain, and then we will draw a veil over this moment. What has happened here is simple. We closed the door on the world for a few seconds. We let breath be as God made it. We did not strive for a peace. We recognized the presence in which peace is not an event, but a fact. We noticed the sky, not the weather. We let a small matter take its place without a throne, and a stand, quiet, gentle, unadvertised, stood up within us. That is Christ's authority recognized. You may have felt nothing at all, and yet you know, because the compulsion to rush weakened, because the need to explain quieted, because the wheel could be released for a moment, that the government shifted shoulders. That knowing is better than any thrill that fades with the applause of a room. Now remember this, and I ask you to remember it with reverent restraint. Do not display this. Do not make a show of it. Keep it as you would keep a flame in a wind. The Father who seeth in secret will reward openly. Let him choose the hour and the manner of the reward. Your part is the secret. Go out from here, do what is to be done, and when a pressure rises, return for 5 seconds, for 10, for 30, to the same inner door, and let the same stand take its place. Do not treat the problem. Do not argue with the scene. Acknowledge the presence and let the inner government govern. That is all. And if, before you sleep tonight, you wish to test the fruit of this without fanfare, sit for a moment at the edge of your bed and say, Father, here I am, and be still long enough to release the wheel. No search, no insistence. Let the gardener tend the garden. In the morning, or at noon, or some quiet hour you did not arrange, you will discover that a word is given, a way is seen, a hardness is softened. You will be able to say in your own words what we are learning together. Christ consciousness is not a feeling. It is presence governing, and the sign of it is a stand within, without excitement, without drama, with God. Now remember this, and I say it to you with all the mentor love I can bring into a sentence. You will never need to know problems. You will only need to know God. Do not let that remain poetry. Let it become the rule by which you walk through your rooms and your hours. I am letting you in on the secret that spared me many arguments with appearances. Do not treat the problem. Abide until the inner shift comes. That is the method of the infinite way. What do we mean by do not treat the problem? We do not mean deny what the eyes report. We do not mean pretend you enjoy what you do not enjoy. We do not mean passivity, neglect, or pious phrases pasted over a bruise. No. We mean one thing only. Refuse to grant appearances authority over your consciousness. Refuse to let a circumstance declare what God is, who you are, and what is possible. You can see a storm and not enthrone it. You can read a letter and not surrender your government to its ink. You can feel a pulse in the body and not concede that flesh has jurisdiction over spirit. That is not treating. You are not arguing with the scene. You are withdrawing from it the consent that makes it your master. Now, the mechanics, because without them, you will nod and then go home and wrestle all night. The mind will try to rehearse details. It will offer you a stage and a script. What she said, what he meant, what they plan, what might go wrong, how to answer, how to defend, how to save face, how to make it turn by noon. The mind is a loyal clerk to appearances. It stamps their papers and ushers them to the front of the line. Do not scold the mind. Bless it and relieve it of a job it was never meant to hold. When the rehearsal begins, gently, without drama, without irritation, return to acknowledgement. Thou art here. Whisper it if you like, or say it without words. Where I am, God is. Then be still. 5 seconds. 10. 30. Do not discuss the matter with God. Do not diagram the improvement you recommend. Do not decorate the problem with sacred vocabulary. Thou art here. Stay the mind on him. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. Not on the symptom, not on the spreadsheet, not on the face that frightened you, on thee. And what are we waiting for in that stillness? A wave of feeling, not necessarily. Sometimes sweetness comes, sometimes not. The moment of change is often this and no more. The compulsion to fix withdraws its claws. The wheel can be released. An unadvertised certainty takes the captain's chair, the sense that life does not require your push to be under government. That is the sign. Do you see how quiet it is? Not a surge, a stand, not force, authority. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me doeth the works. In the instant when that becomes operational instead of ornamental, the treatment is over. You did not treat the problem, you recognized the presence. The Father who seeth in secret will tend to the open. Now let us make this usable in the dust of ordinary life. You are at your desk. The report is unfriendly. The numbers do not sing. The old alarm rises. Do not treat the figures. Do not argue them into better behavior in your imagination. Close the inner door. Keep your eyes open if you must. This is not about posture, and say within, Father, here I am, thine. Then let the sentence end. Be still. If the mind drags you back to the column, return to thou art here. You will notice, if only as a small courtesy in the chest, that urgency loses its tone of command. In that softening comes either the next right step or the liberty to set it aside for an hour without fear. And later, this is the way of it. You find a detail you overlooked, or a call comes, or a path opens that was impossible under pressure. You did not manipulate the outcome. You consented to government. You are in a family conversation that has edged into tension. Voices shape themselves to old patterns. The mind rushes to mount a defense, to prepare a clever reply, to win. Excuse me. Do not treat the problem. Inwardly, secretly, without changing your face, utter, I am willing to be governed. Then be silent a breath longer than habit permits. If a word is given, it will be kinder than you planned. If no word is given, your silence will do more work than your best argument. The fruit may show up as one softened line on the other's face, or as your own lack of regret afterward. A soft answer turneth away wrath. We do not manufacture the soft answer. We abide until we are not the manufacturer. You wake at night and the body calls your attention in a way you do not prefer. The old training begins to consult symptoms, to name, to fear. Stop. Do not treat the symptom, not because the body is unimportant, but because the body is not your God. Withdraw consent from the symptom's jurisdiction. Turn within. Father, thou art the life of this life. Where I am, God is. Then be quiet long enough to feel the edge dull on fear. That dulling is not indifference, it is authority returning to its rightful place. If you are led to rise, rise. If you are led to rest, rest. If help is to be sought, you will seek it without panic. The presence governs the means, and peace accompanies the chosen step. The difference is not always in the encyclopedia of actions. It is in the seat of government. Let me interrupt myself here because the temptation in practice is subtle. You will begin within, and then a thought will whisper, perhaps if I say, "Thou art here" 27 times, the account will improve by morning. No, that is treating the problem under the sign of prayer. You have merely exchanged the language of numbers for the language of religion and kept the same engine of control. Do not count repetitions. Do not measure the minutes. Do not check the feeling tone every few seconds as if taking your own temperature. Abide, yield. Let the inner government seat itself. Acknowledge him in all thy ways, and he shall direct thy paths. In other words, the directing proceeds from acknowledgement, not from managing the acknowledgement. Someone will ask, how long do I abide? As long as it takes for the shift in authority to occur, and sometimes that is 5 seconds, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes it visits you later while washing a cup. Abiding is not clocked, it is consented to, and when the shift has come, even if it is only the quiet license to take your hands from the wheel, resume your task. Do not remain in the closet worshiping your quiet. Carry it into the open as invisible government. If agitation returns, that is not failure. That is an invitation to another brief return inside. 5 seconds, 10, 30. Beautiful. Now hear this as a rule. You can take on your key ring. Refuse the mind's demand to consult the problem for your peace. Begin within. Abide until the compulsion to correct gives way to the certainty of presence. Then move, and do not display any of this. Keep it secret. Keep finger on the lip. The Father who seeth in secret rewardeth openly, in ways and at hours, and through channels you could not have diagrammed under pressure. I am not asking you to understand the mechanics of the reward. I am asking you to entrust the mechanics to the one who alone is mechanic of the universe and to fulfill your modest part, acknowledgement and abiding. Over time, and I can say this to you with a great deal of authority, because I have watched it in my life and in lives from Honolulu to New York, from London into Europe, the practice finds a rhythm. Not because you have become clever, but because you no longer wander from home so often. Abiding turns from a rescue operation into a way of breathing. The shift is quicker, the release is steadier, and you will notice that you speak fewer words to problems and more words to God, until even words thin and awareness stands. Then you will be able to tell anyone who seeks this way what you, who have walked it, know. We are not in the business of changing appearances, we are in the business of recognizing presence, and in that recognition the government changes shoulders. The fruit will tell the rest of the story, but proof, remember, is in the quiet certainty, the inner stand that needs no weather report. So tonight and tomorrow when the hour asks for it, practice the key. When the mind rises to treat, smile and say within, "No, not this time. Father, here I am." Let thought attempt its races, let it tire. Stay with "Thou art here." Wait until the throne is occupied by the rightful king within. Then take your step, that is all. And if you forget, and you will, begin again. 5 seconds, 10, 30. Beautiful. The government is his, and in the yielding we discover that life is better run from within than from the fevered edge of our own plans. If this is real, how are we to know? Not by the temperature of our feelings, not by the report of a momentary uplift, not by a story well told under bright lights. By their fruits ye shall know them, not by their fireworks, not by their rhetoric, by their fruits. I am going to say this as plainly as I can because it must be plain to be of use to you. The evidence of quiet authority is harmony. harmony in thought, harmony in speech, harmony in relationships, harmony in supply, harmony in the body, not perfection in a human sense, harmony, and it arises not out of our cleverness or will, but as the natural expression of realized presence. The Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. Do you hear the order in that sentence? Secret first, openly after, within first, without follows, cause first, then effect. Let us begin with the smallest fruits because they arrive sooner than the banners, and they are easy to miss if you are looking for a parade. You will notice that decisions which once held you in the teeth of urgency become quieter. You do not postpone, you are simply not panicked. You choose from a settled place. That is a fruit. You will notice that in situations where once you produced an automatic reply, a sharpness, a defense, a too clever word, there is a breath, and out of that breath comes either a softer answer or no answer at all, which turns out to be the wiser one. That is a fruit. You will notice that the old inner commentator, who kept up color commentary on everyone you met, has grown very tired of his own voice and retires for longer stretches. That is a fruit. These are not headline miracles, these are household mercies. They tell you that government within has resumed the seat. Move then to relationships. I could give you stories from Honolulu to New York, from London into Europe, where men and women who had at one time found themselves at swords' points in their homes or in their offices came to see that after a period of secret abiding, without confrontation, without rehearsed speeches, something in the atmosphere loosened. The expected quarrel did not ignite. The habitual misunderstanding fizzled. A letter that you had braced yourself to receive arrived with a tone you did not anticipate. You did not hypnotize the other person into kindness. You did not manipulate outcomes with spiritualized will. You recognized presence, and the recognition expressed itself as an outer tempering. A soft answer turneth away wrath. Do you doubt it? Watch the fruit, not the debate about how it works. The fruit. In the matter of supply, I speak carefully and I speak from experience. My own supply increased at a time when my outer activity did not change to justify it, and I have watched it repeat itself across these years in lives here and abroad. Not a lottery ticket God, not a game of bargains and vows, not a religious mechanism hidden in a phrase. Supply unfolded as right activity, right ideas, right contacts, right timing, all with less strain, less sweat of the brow. What prompted it? What gave it the impulse? I do not know. I only know that where abiding in presence became the practice, the fear of not enough thinned, the compulsion to grasp relaxed, and then channels appeared that the pressured mind had overlooked. Sometimes it was immediate, a payment located, an invitation extended. Sometimes it was gradual, the steady settling of debts, the quiet increase of clientele, the drip-by-drip rise that you could not attribute to one dramatic event. The timing, the fathers, the cause, the secret, the reward, open. Now I must interrupt myself to guard you from superstition, because if you carry that into this room, you will turn a holy thing into a tool for anxiety. Fruit is not a bargain for being good. Fruit is not a prize for correct technique. Fruit is not a payment for your minutes in the closet. Fruit is the nature of the tree. If the root is holy, the branches are holy. You did not buy the fruit. You abided in the root. Do you see the difference? One generates strain, keeping spiritual books to make sure the outcome matches the input. The other rests in presence and lets expression follow its law. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Added, not traded. Added. In the body, the signs are often humble and dear. Ease where there was tightness, rest where there was fret. a night's sleep that returns after weeks without, a breath that drops lower into the belly after months of living up behind the eyes. Do we deny assistance when it is wise? We do not. We simply do not enthrone the symptom as our master. We do not hurry to treat the appearance. We abide until the inner stand is present, and then we take any step that is given, without panic, with peace. And we find this is the fruit, that the step is more apt, the help more suitable, the recovery steadier because it is not born on a river of fear. Sometimes the fruit is swift. Pain eases right there in the chair when the government changes shoulders. Sometimes it is as the dawn, first a graying, then a softening of dark, then a light that lets you see the room. The presence is the cause. The timing is the Father's art. Business? I have watched numbers that ruled a person's mood on Friday lose their power to tyrannize by Monday, not because the arithmetic was instantly different, but because the seat of authority had shifted. And then, quite often, the arithmetic did become different. An account was recovered, an error discovered, a customer returned. The fearful clerk in us wants the different numbers first, and then to feel peace. The infinite way inverts it. Feel the peace because the presence is acknowledged, and let the numbers then take their new place. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee, not on the ledger. Someone will say, but is it always quick? My answer is simple and breaks the spell of hurry. Speed is not a criterion of divinity. Lightning and dawn are both light. Some of you will taste the fruit in a single hour, an issue dissolving like a mist. Some of you will notice it as a season changes. You look back and cannot find the moment when the chill departed, but you notice that you are no longer shivering. Either way, authority does not depend on tempo. Authority depends on presence, and presence depends on nothing. It already is. Our work is acknowledgement. Our sign is the quiet stand. Our evidence is the fruit that follows in its own wise sequence. I am letting you in on another secret, and once you see it, you will cease chasing the dramatic. The surest fruit, the one that arrives before any ledger, letter, or limb changes, is the lifting of compulsion, when the wheel can be released without dread, when you feel the difference between I must and I am moved, when silence becomes more potent than your best argument. That is the fruit already at the door. And then, without your management, outer harmonies align to the inner law. The phone call comes. The apology forms, yours or theirs. The idea lights. The closed door opens, or else a different door reveals itself, and you wonder how you hadn't noticed it on that hallway before. You did not orchestrate a happy ending. You recognized a holy origin. Now remember this, because it will keep you from turning your practice into a performance. Do not announce your fruit. Do not measure your fruit against another's. Do not delay your gratitude because the improvement did not wear the costume you imagined. Keep finger on the lip. Keep the secret secret. Let the open reward be the quieted room, the reconciled heart, the provision that arrived without sweat, the body that discovered ease without terror. And when you are pressed for proof, you will be able to say with reverent restraint, not as a boast, but as a witness, where I am, God is. I went within, and the Father that seeth in secret rewarded me openly. Beautiful, that is enough. We do not hype, we harvest. We do not trade, we trust. And life, governed from within, shows its governance where anyone can see it. On the face, in the home, in the day's work, without our strain and without our show. Now, there is a point at which I must speak very plainly for your comfort, because if I do not, some of you will go home and disqualify yourselves on the wrong grounds. There will be days of dullness. There will be hours when the mind will not sit in the chair you have provided for it. There will be moments when the body is tired and the heart is flat, and the emotions are as gray as a winter sky. And you will say, nothing happened. But I must interrupt that sentence. Nothing emotional happened. That is all. Presence is not cancelled by your weather. Be still and know that I am God does not come with a footnote that says, on sunny afternoons only. Where I am, God is. Where God is, I am. The kingdom within is a fact before it is a feeling, and we come to know it by recognition, not by thermometer. I know this territory, and I say that for your relief. The strange thing is that in my early going I did not know how to pray, and in that ignorance I had long stretches that I could only call dry. No light, no sweet lift, no honey on the tongue. Yet by now I am in a position to say to you with a great deal of authority that those seasons did their secret work. They trained me out of dependence on mood. They weaned me from judging God by my blood pressure. They brought me to the quiet authority that stands even when the orchestra is not playing. Beautiful. Do you see the gift in what you once called lack? Now remember this because it will steady your step. Emotion is the most changeable instrument in your kit. It is useful when it sings, but it cannot be the standard of measurement. Authority can be present when you feel nothing at all, and very often the authority that matters most is recognized as a cessation rather than a sensation, the compulsion loosening, the haste losing its command, the need to manage backing quietly out the door. If you rise from your chair without fireworks but with less mesmerism, something happened. The Father that seeth in secret has done more than your feelings advertised. What then shall we do when dryness sits down beside us? First, do not argue with it. Do not dress it up with sad names. Do not call it failure or absence or punishment. Acknowledge it as weather. Let it pass unlabeled. Second, shorten the period and increase the visits. Do not attempt to force 20 minutes of dessert. Take 30 seconds of real turning. Take 10, take 5. Thou art here. That is enough to change the seat of government. And then, when your attention wanders, as it will, return. 5 seconds, 10, 30, many times a day, not as a superstition, not to earn a star, but as obedience to the simple invitation, pray without ceasing, which is to say, acknowledge without ceasing. Moments, flashes, they add up to a climate. Some of you will say, but this restlessness, it is unbearable. I am letting you in on a secret that will make you kinder to yourself. Restlessness is not a sign that God is absent. It is the personal sense protesting its loss of control. The clerk of the mind who has stamped appearances for years objects to early retirement. It rattles the drawers. It calls meetings. It throws papers in the air. Do not try to reason with it. Do not fight it. Bless it for its long service and quietly withdraw the authority you once granted it. Observe without commentary. Ah, there is the old clerk again, and return within. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee. Stay it and stay it again. Peace is not made by conquering restlessness. Peace arrives as you cease believing restlessness has jurisdiction. There is also the matter of fatigue, and I want to speak to it tenderly. The body has its rhythms, and the Father knows our frame. If you come to the chair and find your eyes heavy, do not whip yourself into alertness as if God requires your sparkle. Sit a moment in reverent consent. Say within, Father, here I am, and if sleep comes, sleep with the name of God on your lips. You have not failed. You have abided as far as you could in that hour. Often you will discover that upon waking there is a freshness of thought or a softening of fear that you could not produce by force. He giveth his beloved sleep. In other words, grace will use even your weariness as a door. Let us be practical, because practice is where courage is built. You sit down, and the mind begins the evening news at a shout. Do not wrestle the headlines. Grant them no commentary. Turn once, where I am, God is, and rest 5 seconds in that acknowledgement. The noise will test you. Return. 10 seconds. Then rise and wash a cup. Later, at the traffic light, 5 seconds. In the hallway before a meeting, 10 seconds. In the grocery line, 30. This is not trivializing prayer. This is making the secret place the most visited room in your day. Gradually, you will find that the noise shortens its broadcast, not because you out-argued it, but because attention has learned a shorter path home. Someone will object, but if I feel nothing, how shall I know to stop? You will know because something in you ceases clutching. The wheel can be released. The need to check, measure, and take your spiritual temperature relaxes. You rise not with a glow, perhaps, but with a steadiness. That steadiness is your criterion. The measure is not the feeling you gained, but the mesmerism you lost. If you lost 10 degrees of fear, if you lost the urge to explain yourself, if you lost the compulsion to answer a letter tonight that can wait until morning, that is fruit. Do not despise it because it is not dramatic. Let me interrupt with a rule you may keep on your key ring. Do not make dryness your doctrine. If you have 3 dry days, do not rename the Father by them. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me doeth the works. That is true whether you are thrilled or tired. Your part is to present yourself, to acknowledge, to abide for 5 seconds or 50, and to go on about your day under a new government. If dryness returns, begin again. If restlessness protests, bless it and begin again. If the mind insists, this is useless, smile inwardly and begin again. The kingdom is within you. You are practicing access, not purchasing admission. I do not mean by any of this that we celebrate aridity for its own sake or that we turn discipline into a badge. I mean only that we learn to separate presence from our moods, so that presence may govern us through every mood. In time, and I speak now from long watching, the rhythm comes. At first, the practice is like learning to walk in the dark, hand along the wall. Then there are moments of dawn. Then, one day, you realize you can turn within at will without hunting for a feeling to assure you. The authority stands whether or not you stand in gooseflesh. That is freedom. So when feelings fight you, do not take the bait. Keep finger on the lip. Keep the practice secret and brief and frequent. Reduce the minutes, increase the returns. Stop when the clutching stops. Move when the compulsion releases. And let this sentence end any argument that dryness brings. Dryness does not mean absence of Christ. It often means you are learning authority without dependence on mood. Beautiful. That is the sober happiness of the infinite way. A life governed from within, steady in every weather, certain of the presence that is closer to you than breathing and nearer than hands and feet. Now I want to say something very plain for your comfort, and I am going to say it without any embroidery because it must be simple if it is to dissolve an old superstition. This authority is not reserved for the few. It is not a specialty gift for the uplifted, the talented, the morally decorated, or the fortunate. If the kingdom of God is within you, then every you is included, high or low, rich or poor, sick or well, saint or sinner. Do you see that if it were otherwise, Scripture would contradict itself? God is no respecter of persons. If he were, we should all be anxiously looking for credentials to present at the door of the secret place. But there is no door to knock upon. There is a within to acknowledge. Where I am, God is. Where God is, I am. That erases every line your mind drew between the spiritual and me. The strange thing, and I say it for your encouragement, is that when I began, I had none of the qualifications that people want to put on a poster. I did not know how to pray. I had no theological training in the sense that seems to impress people. And yet the fruit came as I learned to turn within. By now, I am in a position to say to you with a great deal of authority, that it is an impossibility that God should pluck one from the billions and hand him a private key, while the rest must peer through the window. What happened to me was not a medal pinned on a deserving chest. It was the opening of an inner door that had been there all along, and if it is there for one, it is there for all. I am letting you in on the secret that undoes 20 superstitions. Availability is universal. Realization is personal. The availability is God's. The realization is the fruit of your turning. Now let me interrupt myself, because some of you are saying, "But I do not have the rhythm for this." I know that story. Every art has its natural players and its note readers, and I have watched it in music and in meditation. There is the one who sits down and the stillness comes as if it had been waiting at the door with his name on it. There is the one who counts measures, who moves the hand along the wall in the dark, who begins mechanically, awkwardly, dutifully. Both are in the art. Both are in the way. The player who hears by instinct and the player who must practice scales arrive at the same music if they abide. Meditation is an art that can be learned. At first there are hints, then moments, then dailiness, and at last what I can only call at will. And do not be frightened by that phrase. At will does not mean that you command God. It means that your attention learns the short path home, that the inner government becomes accessible without mood or machinery. Beautiful. Do not then make a hero of the teacher or a hostage of yourself. I am not here to give you my light to carry like a borrowed lantern. I am here to point you to your own inner lamp. A true teacher's function is to reduce your dependence, not increase it. To bring you to the place where you can sit in your chair, close your eyes, and discover the one who has been closer to you than breathing and nearer than hands and feet. Again and again across these years, when students learned to turn within and to rest until the quiet certainty came, they had no further need of coming back to me for help, except for communion, for the joy of sharing the bread of this presence. Do you see the liberation in that? No middleman, no holy go-between. The Father within me doeth the works. The Father within you doeth the works. This addresses the whole tangle of worthiness that has plagued religion from the beginning. Worthiness, in the sense of earning, is not the currency of the kingdom. If it were, you would spend your days auditing yourself, measuring how many spiritual minutes might purchase how much grace. No, no. Worthiness here is not accomplished by moral strain. It is recognized as already established by indwelling presence. As many as received him, to them gave he power. Receive, not achieve. Whosoever will, let him take of the water of life freely. Freely, if your conscience brings you to contrition, let it be the doorway to consent, not a campaign. If your past parades in front of you with its banners of failure or pride, let it pass. The sun does not ask the leaf for a resume before it gives light. The leaf receives. So do you. Someone will say, "But what of my background? What of my education? What of my culture, my color, my station?" I answer you in the only way that has any power. The things of spirit do not consult your categories. In him we live and move and have our being. If life itself is your environment, then who shall you be to be exempt from it? If the spring rises within, then you cannot be barred by the fence that men have put around a field. The spring will appear under your foot as surely as under mine, and the only difference will be in the steadiness with which we come to it. Categories create hypnotism. Hypnotism creates delay. Acknowledgement breaks the spell. Turn within and witness that what you were trying to become is what you have never ceased to be, the place where God is. Carry then a quiet confidence with you into your day. You are not trying to become spiritual. You are learning to stop overlooking what is. That is all. Do you notice the unburdening in that sentence? You are not outfitting yourself with feathers and halos. You are practicing remembering. 5 seconds in the kitchen, 10 seconds before the phone, 30 seconds when fear comes with its portfolio of evidence, not to prove yourself, not to qualify, to acknowledge. And as you acknowledge, you will find that the inner government stands up in you, and in time, you will be surprised to discover that you can turn within anywhere, at a desk, in a bus, in a hospital corridor, and there it is, the same presence, the same quiet authority that does not depend on your mood or your merit. Now remember this because it will save you years. Do not compare your rhythm with another's, and do not borrow trouble by admiring what you call a gifted one. If you must admire, admire the universality of grace. Admire the patience of the Father's art that takes the quick and the slow, the dry and the tender, and brings them into one music. You will have your own cadence. You will have your own proofs, and they will not be smaller because you did not enter by fireworks. Fruit is fruit. Harmony is harmony. Peace is peace. And they come as surely to the one who counted 5 seconds in faith as to the one who sat an hour in light. I am letting you in on this so that you may begin now, without bargaining for a better self. Begin as you are. Begin where you are. Begin with the one sentence that is always true. Where I am, God is, and rest there until you feel the shift. Not a thrill perhaps, but the loosening of the clutch, the settling of the heart, the end of the need to prove. Then rise and go about your work under new management. This is the inclusion of the infinite way, a life governed from within by a presence that excludes no one, exalts no pedigree, and answers to no human bar. Universal, learnable, already at hand. Now let us make this plain and practical, because if it remains a beautiful idea without a path under your feet, it will tease you more than it will help you. A rule of life is not a law that binds. It is a rhythm that frees. So we will set a gentle discipline, and I mean gentle, because grace will not be forced. In the morning, before the feet meet the floor, turn. Not with many words, not with a demand. A simple acknowledgement. Where I am, God is. He is closer to me than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Then sit if you can, 1 minute or 5, and close the door within yourself. Be still and know. If the mind runs, let it run past you. If there is no sweetness, do not ask for honey. State the truth quietly. I can of mine own self do nothing. The Father within me doeth the works. And wait for the little loosening, the inward nod that says, yes. It may last 5 seconds. Beautiful. 5 seconds of government restored is more than 5 hours of self-management. Then carry this into the day by small returns. Do you see how kind that is? We are not laying heavy tasks upon you. We are asking you to practice remembering. Before a difficult call, pause at the threshold, not to rehearse your cleverness, not to fortify your will. Pause and acknowledge. Father, thou art the only authority in this conversation. Yield the need to win or to be approved. Wait a breath, then dial under authority rather than under anxiety. After receiving news, good or grim, close the inner door for a moment. Thou remainest. Do not let news crown itself in your soul. When the body complains, do not hurry to enthrone the complaint. Place a hand quietly, inwardly say, where I am, God is, and refuse the temptation to treat the symptom with spiritual argument. Do not treat the problem, withhold authority from it. Abide until the hush arrives, then take whatever human step is given you, but take it from peace, not from panic. And in the evening, make a release. Draw a soft line under the day, not an audit of spiritual successes and failures, not a report delivered to an exacting deity, a release. Father, into thy hands I commend all that has passed through my hands. If there were words spoken that you regret, lay them down now. If there were victories you are tempted to admire in the mirror, lay them down too. Keep finger on the lip, Let the secret remain secret. Sit a minute, 1 minute, or 3, and allow the thought stream to settle until you can feel, even if faintly, that the government is not on your shoulder. Then sleep with that name upon your lips. He giveth his beloved sleep. This is the way rhythm is made. Morning turning, small returns, evening release. Not as a performance, not as a display, but as a quiet threading of presence through the beads of your day. I have watched this gentle rope hold when storms tried to pull men and women apart from the within. Hints, and then practice. Occasional flashes that brighten an hour. A season when nearly every day carries a moment of light. Then frequent returns so natural you do not need to check your watch. And at last what I spoke to you of, at will. Now let me interrupt myself and define that, because it must not be misunderstood. At will is not commanding God to appear on cue. It is attention learning the short path home. It is the inner door so often opened that the latch no longer sticks. You do not make illumination perform. You simply do not have to wander long in corridors to find the room. The arc may be swift for some, slower for others. Do not compare. Remember our little taxi driver of music who could find the rhythm without counting, and the note reader who arrived by patient scales. Both arrived at music. Meditation is an art that can be learned. At first, you have hints. Then you practice because you are invited, not because you are scolded. Then one day you notice that there is a daily ease, a daily wordless yes that meets you. Later, you find that in the press of a moment, at a desk, in a bus, in a hospital corridor, you can turn within, and there it is. The same presence, the same quiet authority. That is at will. It is not a badge. It is muscle memory of the soul. Carry with you then some in-the-moment cues. When you step into a room charged with tension, you do not take on the charge. You pause inwardly on the sill. Peace, be still, not to the people, to your sea within. When you read a letter that seems to demand an immediate answer, you do not allow the letter to be your clock. You set it down, turn within 30 seconds. The Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly, and wait for the compulsion to lose its bite. When a thought accuses you or flatters you, you do not hold court. You let the accuser and the flatterer pass unreceived. You stand in the recognition, where I am, God is, and authority, not debate, answers your thought life. If you must speak, speak from that authority. If you must act, act from that authority. And if you must be silent from that authority. Secrecy is not shyness, it is sanctity. Keep finger on the lip. Resist the age's invitation to publicize the holy. Do not make a performance out of your practice. You are not collecting stories to impress or to sell. You are cultivating a sanctuary. The Father that seeth in secret rewardeth openly. Let the open reward be fruit others can recognize without your advertisement. Atmosphere clearer around you. Decisions without fret. A patience not native to your temperament. Supply arriving without grasping. A body remembering ease without terror. If someone asks, answer with reverent restraint. A witness is enough. Bragging is a leak in the vessel. Do not make rules for others out of what grace is doing in you. Do not correct your neighbor's practice while neglecting your own. Keep the lamp trimmed within and let the light do its work. At this point, I want to give you a commission, because a rule of life without ascending becomes self-improvement, and we are not in that trade. The Christ within is not a comfort blanket. He is an authority. He governs, he directs, he corrects, he provides, he heals, he reconciles. He is not given to soothe your moods. He is recognized to take his seat. So walk as though governed from within, not arrogantly, not with a superiority that has to announce itself. Quietly, a man or a woman under authority does not stamp feet or raise voice. They do not scramble. There is a steadiness that others will notice before you do. and often they will relax in your presence without knowing why. The rod and the staff comfort, not because they are decorative, but because they point to a shepherd who knows the way. Now, remember this, because it will keep you straight on the road. You will never need to know problems. You will only need to know God. You will not be asked to make your life run by spiritual mechanics or to argue with appearances until you are blue in the face. You will be asked to return within again and again, briefly and simply, until the inner government is felt as quiet certainty. Then you will move. Then you will speak. Then you will wait. And life will begin to show its governance where anyone can read it, in the day's work, in the home, on the face, without your strain and without your show. Begin then tonight with an evening release. Begin in the morning with a minute that belongs to God before it belongs to the world. Begin through the day with 5-second acknowledgments that change the seat of government. Keep it secret, keep it simple, keep it steady, and in due season, its own wise season, you will discover that you can turn within at will, and that this authority, not your emotion, is the climate of your life. You will find yourself saying without effort and without drama, "Where I am, God is. The Father within me doeth the works," and you will be content to let the fruit speak. Beautiful. That is enough.